Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. On this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the sports business industry. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our 76 Capital website. Today, my guest on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show is the executive editor of the Sports Business Journal, Abe Madkour. Abe brings more than 20 years of experience covering the business of sports and serves as the executive editor of the Sports Business Journal. He is responsible for shaping the editorial direction of the publications while managing the entire editorial staff. He oversees the editorial content for their various conferences produced by the Sports Business Group, including the prestigious World Congress of Sports, Sports Business Awards, and the 40 Under 40 Awards, and so much more. And I'm so excited to have Abe as a guest on our 76 Capital Leadership Show. Abe, welcome to our show.
It's great to be with you, Wayne. I'm a big fan. Love that what you're building, and can't wait to get this discussion going.
Well, it's really exciting to have you on the show and really talk about the incredible growth of the asset class of sports. And I know you're calling in now from the college football championships, the CFP that just ended last night. What were your impressions of that, as well as just the overall business atmosphere of this large event that the CFP put on?
So, Wayne, I think that everything I'm hearing from 4 days here in Atlanta is positive. I think that the leaders in college sports really feel that the first year of the 12-team playoff went well, not perfect, but well. I think that they see great. They have great aspirations for doing more and building this into something really big, really special. And I think all the foundations are there, Wayne. I do think that, they're going to increase the number of teams. I think they're going to look at the seeding process. I think they're going to look at the location of the games. But all in all, it's a great event. And if people haven't been here, no, it's not a Super Bowl. But I would put it right up to par with, it's not as big as March Madness either. So I do think that there's a runway here for the organizers as they look at a sports business industry event, Wayne. Like there's some room to grow here, but you can get a lot done. You can meet a lot of people, and they do feel they're on the right track.
Well, certainly the CFP is part of this larger professionalization of college sports that you and I both talk about, we invest in, you guys talk about, cover it, really have done an amazing job of that. I mean, it's also the professionalization of just youth sports in general. What are your thoughts around just where things have been and kind of where they're going with this whole, with everything that's happening now from a professionalization perspective?
So you and I have known each other a long time. You and I both remember when, college sports was a nice business to be in. It had a great following, but, I would call it right now, college football clearly, easily the second most popular sport in the United States. If you look at just fan viewership and followers and avids and interest and attention. So I do think that I've been in this business 30 years. So have you. I mean, the growth of college sports from a revenue perspective has been astronomical. It will continue to grow. There are so many people, and we read about them every day, Wayne, who want to invest lots of money into the college sports enterprise because they see it as undervalued and they see it as having a great return potential. Now, I think it's really difficult right now for the leaders of college sports who have been in this space for a long time to wrestle with that and to figure out, where do they take this enterprise? And I was at a conference, and the word you just used, the professionalization of college sports, it rolled off everybody's tongue very easily. And that wouldn't have been the case, Wayne, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where there was a concern or a fear of professionalizing college sports. Now, with that said, as we stick with college sports, there's a lot of headwinds. There's a lot of headwinds from college basketball. There are a lot of headwinds for the Olympic sports on campus. And so it's a very challenging time, and it's a tense time. I can tell you every meeting I had here in Atlanta with leaders of college sports, there's an undercurrent of uncertainty, of tension about the way forward. With youth sports, great potential, a lot of interest and energy, big time investors seeing an opportunity and investing in youth sports. very fragmented, as you know, very, very, I would say, there's no one leader of youth sports. And so I do think there's a leadership delta that could be filled in somewhere down the road. I don't know, but we're seeing a lot of investments and a lot of growth. Again, pros and cons on both of those as well.
I think one of the other things that we both have recognized and really seen is, we talk about the professionalization of the actual sport, but about the professionalization of the business of sports and the people, the types of people that are now running teams and leagues, right? I mean, it's really amazing to see the level of business person that's now involved. What are your impressions around all that?
Well, you nailed it. I remember in 1994, we were just getting to see Fox Sports get involved in, remember the NFL, they were involved in the NHL. They were a brand new player. That really shook the industry because of a new way of thinking. And at that time, I remember one of my first days on the job at Sports Business Daily, we were aggregating all this news, and the news in Tampa was that Hugh Culverhouse was putting the Tampa Bay Bucks up for sale. Big story. But at that time, those teams could it go for 200 million, 300 million. Now, look at the valuations we are seeing on sports franchises. The Commanders go for $6 billion. There's talk about the Celtics going for $6 billion. And so, to your point, the asset class has just changed dramatically, and the sophistication of the people involved in sports has increased dramatically. It's a much more sophisticated, savvy, smart business. When I got in, there was still a lot of mom and pop ownership groups. It was seen as a small business, a very insular business. Now it's global. Now it's professionalized, and now you're just seeing so many smart people from and I'm not saying there weren't smart people before. There were, but now you see so many more. McKinsey, from Bain. You're seeing all these people, so many people that we recognize at 40 under 40. They're all Harvard. They're all from very strong institutions who probably could have their choice of industries to work in, and they're working in sports. So you're absolutely right in terms of the size, scale, and sophistication of sports business.
You go back and you touched on this a little bit. I mean, thinking about your own career, I think it'd be interesting for our listeners and viewers on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show to hear a little bit about what you've done in this business. I mean, and how the Sports Business Journal has really become the must read. You have to listen to you in the morning and your team on the Buzzcast, and you got to pay attention. You got to get the magazine and literally and go to your conferences. I mean, how have you been able to put yourself and the Sports Business Journal in the middle of all of this?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate the support. I think that we've always come at an approach that the industry needs to be informed. And when we started, there was really no B2B trade publication in the business of sports. There had been some other ones, Wayne. There was Sports Inc. and there was a couple of others out there. But, even I'll give a colleague of mine, Jeffrey Pollack, he founded this Sports Business Daily. Whitney and Ray Shaw, who were my bosses, they had the idea for Sports Business Journal. They saw a need to inform the sports industry of news and information and make it about the people in the industry. And that fed off from the starting of the publications to events, to conferences where we're able to educate, inform, bring people together, have people meet each other. How many people, Wayne, have you and I met at one of our conferences, and it's led to either a great business friendship or business deal? And so we've been able to work really hard, and then we bring in events and galas and award recognitions like 40 under 40, like our champions, like our lifetime achievement. We partnered, and there are sister company, Leaders in Sport, and that's in London, and they're an event business. So we consider ourselves offering a global solution to bring the sports industry together. And for your listeners, I mean, we are inside the business. We do have some sports fans who read SBJ, but we are a B2B trade media outlet and a media platform that informs all walks of the industry, whether you work at a league, a team, an agency, a sports network, whether you're an agent, whether you work in collegiate sports. And so it's been through a lot of hard work, good timing. But now look at it, Wayne. There's a number of sports business outlets because sports business is interesting right now, and more people are paying attention to it.
Absolutely. And you guys are expanding. I was excited to see you now have a TV show. You're a TV star. Tell us about that.
Well, we're partnering with Monumental Sports, which is Ted Leonsis and Zach Leonsis, and they had this idea about they're very avid readers and engaged with SBJ. And to our point that you were making, Wayne, they see an audience of people who are probably interested in this content. And so we're developing a monthly TV show, 30-minute TV show with Monumental Sports, and it will look at all the issues and trends that you talked about, that you read about in SBJ. So our first episode's on the building boom of stadiums and some of the new things that we're seeing when it comes to the fan experience. You talk about going to your favorite team, the Eagles, and seeing them play. Like, going to an event now, far different than when I first stepped into Fenway or Foxborough as I grew up in New England and I was a young kid. Those events were pretty hard to deal with. And now they've made the facility experience so much more sophisticated, so much more enhanced. And so we're looking at some of the things that teams are doing in our first episode. But we do think this will find an audience, and we want to expand it. So I appreciate that. But, I think that you do it the same way in the business. We're just trying to always provide more value, and we're thinking about where are there opportunities. And people know the media business, which we are mainly, is a hard business. You got to work really hard to get advertising, to get subscriptions, and to get delegate and registrations to our events. So we grind it out day by day, but we're excited for the TV show.
Yeah, well, we're excited to watch it, and that's great. Congratulations! And one of the other really big things that's happening on a global scale, but really will have, I think, an incredible impact on the United States, is the World Cup in 2026. And I noticed that this year also, another thing, you guys are adding a new event for around soccer this year. I read about, but what are your thoughts on just soccer and what it's been and where it potentially could go, with the fact that we as North America, I guess would we say, is now going to be hosting the World Cup here?
Hard to believe that we have seen such growth in soccer, professional, both men's and women's. I mean, when I started at Sports Business Daily, Major League Soccer did not even exist yet. So, now we have a league, a very vibrant league. Yes, there are always people who, say that it's not the best league in the world and they prefer the Premier League and other things like that. But I give a ton of credit to the leaders at Major League Soccer for what they've done over a 25-year period or more. And I think the World Cup, is everybody's looking at that, Wayne, and I'm sure you sense it as well, as a tipping point for the sport in North America. I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Of course, they have this Club World Cup in 25, then the main World Cup in 26. That will be shared, the main World Cup, with Canada and Mexico. But where I am sitting today in Atlanta, before I go to my home in Charlotte, in Atlanta, they'll have, I believe, 8 World Cup matches. Think of those as economic drivers in those markets. 8 matches in a month. And in Dallas, you'll have 9. LA, I think you'll have 8. New York, you have as many, so many in the finals. So it is going to be an incredible infusion of interest in soccer. And also, for 2 months in America, Canada, and Mexico, you're going to have fans from around the world being in these markets, talking about their country's teams, being either at the games or waiting outside at watch parties around these games. And I do think it will influence the next generation of sports athletes and fans to really be turned on by soccer. So that's the bet. That's the bet that FIFA and MLS and CONCACAF are making and hoping. So we'll see how it plays out. I think you'd agree with me, Wayne. The U.S. knows how to hold big events well. And even though there are questions about how prepared everybody is for the World Cup in just a matter of time, I think we'll really do it quite well, and it'll be an extraordinary event.
Have you heard any sort of inside conversations or anyone sort of really talk about the, some special things that are going to be happening, or just anything that's maybe out of the ordinary?
Well, I'll probably flip that, Wayne, and most of that I'm hearing is just a little bit of uncertainty. FIFA sets the rules, FIFA sets the guidelines, FIFA sets the logistics and basically the sales inventory for all these host cities. And these what these host cities have to do is enormous. So like I said, in Atlanta and Dallas, Miami, Kansas City, and the sense that I'm hearing on the ground from those markets, Wayne, is that they feel a little bit uncertain of what they need to get done. They're waiting for specific guidelines from FIFA. Sometimes they're moving forward without having specific guidelines, but they need to get their preparations ready. Like I said, every market's probably going to have huge fan fest, huge watch parties around stadiums in public parks. Those would be sponsored by probably non-official FIFA sponsors so that cities would have inventory to sell, and host committees have to raise a lot of money to put on these events in those markets. So that's the biggest thing I'm hearing right now. But of course, you're going to want to look at the U.S. team's performance and how they play in 26, because that could certainly drive ratings and interest.
You know, we keep kind of hearkening back. I guess we're sounding like I'm sound like an old man when I say these things to you. But you know, you think back to the old days of just where the games were on ABC, CBS, right, and NBC. And now, all of a sudden, the major tech players and the involvement now, I was just listening this morning, you know, to the buzzcast that one of your colleagues was filling in for you on, and really talking about Netflix and the numbers during for the NFL games during Christmas. The fact that you had to tune in, you know, my line for 2024 was like, if you don't have Netflix and you go to someone's house, if someone go to someone's house for Christmas on Netflix and they don't have Netflix, you're going to leave, you know? So like, it's one of those things that, you know, the question is like kind of what's next, but at the same time, it's unbelievable to see what Apple and Netflix and Meta and Google are now doing in and around the world of sports. It must be incredible for you to cover.
I think you nailed it. For your listeners and viewers, do not underestimate what Netflix has been able to do in the last few months. It has gotten the attention of everybody at the highest levels in sports business. And the market caps of these companies, Amazon, Netflix, Apple, so it's not even a fair fight with them against the traditional media companies, because they far exceed them in terms of their market cap. And so they're willing to pay whatever they need to drive subscriptions. And they're all starting this new advertising tier. And so for them, it's a big subscription play. And right now, you know what? Netflix dabbled in sports. They did docuseries. They would test some live events. They tested a live golf event, a live tennis event. But I can tell you what they've seen with both the Tyson Paul fight, and then the Christmas Day games. I'm hearing that, yes, they are going to be all in on sports. And that's a huge, huge driver of interest by the sports leagues, because they love that. They love another bidder. And Amazon's the same way. I think Apple's an interesting one, Wayne. We've seen the MLS deal. I think some people are less bullish on that MLS Apple deal than others have been. So we'll have to see what their strategy is. Apple likes to own everything that they do in terms of a sports deal, where Netflix and Amazon seem to play in the sandbox well with some other providers. But the days of everything being on CBS, Fox, or NBC, ABC, ESPN, those days are over, definitely over.
Well, but at the same time, you have groups like ESPN who are trying to make moves, right? They're trying to make some plays. What are some of the things that you're seeing that, you know, Jimmy Pitaro and his team at ESPN are doing to fight back, I guess, in a way?
Oh, I think that, you know, I've got a lot of respect for Bob Iger and Jimmy Pitaro. I mean, ESPN is still the player, but it's just a different right now. They're different. Like I said, there are different players in the sandbox with them. But, you know, we know what ESPN's strategy is in terms of going direct to consumer. That's that whole D2C that we hear about. ESPN flagship, it's called, for your listeners. The goal is that would get to all audiences, where I'm a sports fan and I could subscribe to ESPN flagship as a direct-to-consumer offering. I don't have to pay for cable. I don't have to get ESPN in the bundle, but I will be able to pay a monthly fee and get it wherever I want to go, on my phone, on my laptop, on my big screen, as a direct-to-consumer offering. They haven't set pricing yet, Wayne. They haven't set rollout date, but they'll be even more things on that flagship product than you would see on the traditional ESPN linear broadcast. There'll be more betting interfaces. There'll be more stats and details. So that is what everybody is watching. That's what ESPN is doing. And they're doing that because, as you know, cord cutting is real. Cord cutting is happening. Just 8 years ago, 6 years ago, ESPN might have been in 105 million homes. Now they're in probably 70 million and going down, maybe even a little less than 70 million. So that's a big delta that they're trying to reach now through this new offering. So very smart people at Disney, and strategy at ESPN is very sound. That's what they're doing. And the others are doing it as well. Paramount, Viacom with CBS, certainly Comcast with NBC and Peacock. Fox's strategy is a little different because they don't have a true direct-to-consumer sports offering. They have Tubi. So it's a really fascinating time in the media business. Lots of changes.
Yeah, lots of changes. And also at the same time, there are lots of really, incredible individuals that you've covered over the years. Each year, I love how you and the team at SBJ cover 4 or 5 like titans, and you feature them each year. I think that's a really great thing. Are there certain people over your career that have really impacted you and the business that you kind of look back and say, wow, this interview or this time with this person really changed or had a huge impact on your life?
I love that you mentioned that, because there's sports is a people business, and it's all about relationships, doing business with people that you like, and you can do business with. And certainly, like the likes of a George Bodenheimer was been a huge influence to me. He ran ESPN, and one of the most sharp but also humble, gracious, kind. Like, he is the gold standard of leadership. Dick Ebersol was a huge supporter of me personally, but also SBJ. Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, they have been incredible, I would say, sounding boards for me personally, but also people who have really helped SBJ get to where it is today. We've had, Bob Iger, we mentioned Jimmy Pitaro. So Jim Host in the college level, the late Bill Battle, who just died in November. These are all titans of the business who started industries in sports business. And I often say, like, there wouldn't be an SBJ if not for what these people built in terms of either sales and marketing efforts, and like all the sponsorship deals we've written about regarding Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Nike and all these different companies. They were all started by, like you said, pioneers in the business. So probably too many to name, but everybody's very, very, very gracious in the sports business.
One of them that you didn't just mention, which actually I recognized was in one of the recent editions of SBJ. You look back; it's been 5 years since David Stern has passed, and David was someone that certainly had an impact on my life and 76 Capital and what we've done, and certainly had a huge impact on the business of sports and the NBA. As a whole, and it was one of the first interviews that we did
Really?
with 76 Capital was sitting with David and just talking about how the great things that he got to do. And there's something, just such a special person that he was.
I love that you brought that up, because I couldn't think of everybody, and David was incredibly influential and always supportive. And I remember being in his office in New York, and as you know, Wayne, he could have a way about him where he could be a little irascible and tough, and sometimes even dismissive, but sometimes it was an act and sometimes it wasn't. But David was always I was always having a ball whenever I was around David Stern, and he would always push me and make me think about things that I never had thought about. And he left such a legacy of executive leadership, but all the people who have worked with him, worked for him, like you said, Wayne, even had encounters with him, were all better off for it. An incredible legend.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, we're rolling into some of the busy times of the sports industry, with next the Super Bowl and NBA All-Star, and then next thing we're going to be in March Madness and the Masters and MLB, and like, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all rolling again. If you were someone who wanted to break into this industry or wanted to really further their career, or is there certain tips or things that you would recommend to someone as to what to do and how to to break into this industry of sports?
Yeah, and I'd be interested in your tips that you give, because I know young people reach out to you all the time. Um, my story and path is something that I think people could benefit from, and the basis of that is ask for help. I think that's important. Like, sometimes you can't do it all on your own, and sports is a little bit of a still who you know business. And I was working in politics for United States Senator. I loved it, but I was about 24, and I really didn't love it enough that I wanted to make it all in. So I took a chance, and I said I would still want to make a sports run. I still want to make a run at a job in sports business. And my boss, the senator from Vermont, Pat Leahy, who was incredibly gracious to me, he knew a lot of people. And while I was uncomfortable, I did ask him if he would make an introduction to, or introduce me to, people at the Washington Bullets that were owned by a friend of his named Abe Madkour at that time. And the senator he didn't even hesitate 1 second. Absolutely. He called that day. And the next day I had an informational interview. But then I was on my own, and I was able to do it and get into my foot in the door as an unpaid intern, and that led to other things. But I guess lesson number one is, don't be afraid to ask for help from your network. And so young people, Wayne, you're in their network. I talk to a lot of young people. I always tell them, I'm in your network now. So if I can help you, and I am supportive of you, and I'm an advocate for you, don't hesitate to utilize me, but be strategic about it and be smart about it. But don't hesitate asking for help. Number two, you just got to work your tail off. I was working 3 different jobs. 2 of them were in sports business. Then I got offered a job to join Sports Business Daily. Wayne, I took about a $6,000 pay cut, and it was a very low offer, but it was a startup, and it was 1994. And my mom and dad said, you want to work in sports, this is what you got to do. And they said, here's the job, here's the offer. And oh, by the way, you got to get up at 3:30 every morning to start this job. I was just like, what am I thinking? But you do it, and you grind at it, and you provide value, and you show that you're capable and competent and have an interest, and you're inquisitive. Curiosity is a big thing. Like, I was very curious about learning more and more and reading more and more. And then, of course, be informed. And so to be informed, I'm not pitching SBJ here, but yes, read SBJ, read Bloomberg, read the Wall Street Journal, read the New York Times, like read, and understand the business of sports and be curious. If you went into an interview with you, Wayne, and you said, do you have any questions for me? And a young person said, no. I mean, if I know you like I know you, you're going to be turned off by that. I know I am. I want somebody coming prepared with questions for me about how they can get into the business specifically. What should they do? How did you start? What are you good at that you're surprised about? What are some things that you can suggest for me? And also expand the circle. I always tell young people, if you talk to me, ask about who are 2 other people, Abe, I could speak with in your network that could help me. And so I'm happy to give 2 other names or 2 other introductions. So their circle goes from 2 people to 4 people, to 8 people, to 12 people. And that's how you become more informed and I would say more engaged with the leaders in business. What do you tell people?
Well, very similar. I say, look, as you said, it's all about the network. It's all about relationships and knowing as much as possible. So, one of the things that, going back to what we have at 76 Capital here is we have a resource page on our website, which lists all of the different media outlets that you just referenced and more, different podcasts, different things to listen to. You've just got to be incredibly knowledgeable and really think about, what are a lot of the things that we talked about here today, Abe. I mean, you shared, what do you think is going to happen moving forward? How will technology change the game of the business of sports? How will sports betting really impact the business of sports? I mean, we went from one of the crazy things is like we went from a world where you wouldn't walk through a casino or get near a sports book, but now over $150 billion was bet on sports legally in the United States last year. So this world has changed. The world of sports betting and gaming and casinos is now part of sports. The world of tech is now part of sports. These are areas that you need to know, that you need to understand the entertainment industry as well. And it's all of these pieces converging, and it's much more than it used to be. And I think the other thing I say to everyone else anyone is just to be creative and think about what they can do. So, as we start to wrap up here, okay, go ahead.
I'll just say real quick, I love that, because to your point, there are so many ways in to the sports business now that there weren't when I started in 1994, 93, 92. And so you're absolutely right. The industry is so much bigger, broader. So that's a great piece of advice, that people can focus their areas, and there's just more opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, the business of sports is so much more than just, you said it, just the event. The CEO of MGM talked about at one of the big gaming conferences, it's a 72-hour experience when there's a game in Vegas. It's not just a 2-3 hour experience. It's the whole weekend. And so how does that impact your bottom line? How can you get involved with that? What are the types of ancillary types of businesses that are out there today? And I think that's what's exciting for you and for me, and to be able to cover it and invest in it and be part of all these different areas now that you really hadn't thought about before, because you used to you'd show up, you go watch the game and you leave. That's not how it is anymore.
Absolutely.
So, Abe, thank you again for joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. It's been amazing having you on, hearing all the things that you had to say about what's going on across the industry and what's next. And look forward to bumping into you all across the country and the world, across the sports industry this year.
Well, I love what you're building, and I love the way that you comport yourself. And like you said, I mean, you and I, we're both students of the sports business. And if any of the listeners have any questions or want to reach out to me, please do so. Love to hear their stories. But thanks for all you do, Wayne, and pleasure being with you, buddy.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us on our show. Appreciate it.
Be good.
On behalf of the entire 76 Capital team, thank you for joining us for this edition of our Sports Leadership Show. Please remember to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast network or on the 76 Capital website. You can also explore the hundreds of episodes we've produced over the past several years on those same networks. And as always, go out there and make it happen.